The hot soup was still steaming when she picked up the bowl. The waitress had barely touched her. An accident, nothing more. But that didn't matter. In one violent motion, she threw it. The boiling liquid splashed across the young woman's chest and arms. The scream that followed made everyone freeze. Customers stared in horror. The waitress collapsed, sobbing, her skin already blistering red. And the attacker? She stood there, breathing hard, satisfied. "That's what happens when you forget your place," she spat. This wasn't just assault. The slurs she'd used, the hatred in her voice. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. Then, from the back of the restaurant, a man stood up. His voice was quiet, but it carried like a threat. "That's enough, Yoon-hee." The woman's head snapped around, her face drained of color. Because the man walking toward her wasn't just anyone. He was her ex-husband, the former Mafia boss she'd divorced when he went legitimate. The man she'd mocked, humiliated, and thrown away like trash. And now, he'd just witnessed her commit a crime in his own restaurant. She tried to smile, tried to use their history, tried to make it go away. But the look in his eyes told her something terrifying. This time, her money couldn't save her. Her connections couldn't save her. Nothing could save her. What he did next didn't just shock her. It destroyed her entire world. And the waitress she'd tried to humiliate? Her life was about to change in ways no one could have predicted. But before we dive into this incredible story, if you enjoy tales of justice and karma, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Now, let's get into what happened next. The crystal chandeliers of Hwame Restaurant cast a warm golden glow over the pristine white tablecloths below. Seoul's most exclusive Korean fusion establishment hummed with the quiet conversations of the city's elite. The soft clink of expensive silverware against imported porcelain creating a symphony of privilege. In the far corner, partially obscured by a decorative screen of traditional hanji paper, Minjun Park sat alone, his sharp eyes scanning through quarterly reports on his tablet. At 42, Minjun carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that came from years of commanding respect through fear. His tailored black suit fit perfectly across his broad shoulders, and his salt and pepper hair was styled impeccably. But the hardness that once defined his features had softened in recent years, replaced by something resembling peace, or perhaps the exhaustion of a man trying to outrun his shadows. 3 years had passed since Minjun walked away from the Baeko organization, one of Seoul's most powerful criminal syndicates. The decision had cost him everything he'd built over 2 decades. His power, his reputation in the underworld, and his marriage to a woman who loved his status more than she'd ever loved him. The near-fatal ambush that left him with a bullet scar across his ribcage had been his wake-up call. As he lay bleeding in that alley, watching his own blood pool beneath him, Minjun realized he'd become the monster his grandmother had warned him against. The rehabilitation hadn't been easy. Leaving the life meant severing ties, paying enormous sums to ensure his exit was permanent, and rebuilding himself from scratch. He'd taken his legitimate business investments, restaurants, real estate, import companies, and focused everything on going clean. The authorities watched him carefully, waiting for him to slip, but Minjun was determined. He attended therapy, donated anonymously to victims of organized crime, and tried to become someone his late grandmother might have been proud of. The divorce from Yoon-hee had been inevitable. She'd married the feared Mafia boss, not the man trying to find redemption. When he told her he was leaving the organization, she'd laughed, thinking it was a negotiation tactic. When she realized he was serious, her laughter turned to fury. The settlement had been generous, too generous, his lawyers argued, but Minjun wanted a clean break. He gave her the penthouse, a substantial monthly allowance, and walked away. Tonight, he was simply reviewing reports from his restaurant chain, enjoying the anonymity of being just another well-dressed businessman. The irony that he was sitting in his own establishment wasn't lost on him. He owned Hwame, but rarely visited, preferring to let his managers handle operations. Something had drawn him here tonight, though. Perhaps intuition, perhaps coincidence. The restaurant's entrance doors swung open with a flourish, and Minjun glanced up instinctively. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Yoon-hee. She swept in like a queen entering her court, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor with deliberate precision. At 38, she was still stunning, her porcelain skin flawless, her black hair styled in soft waves that cascaded over her shoulders, her figure draped in a cream Chanel dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Behind her trailed 3 other women, all cut from the same cloth, wealthy, immaculately dressed, and radiating the kind of entitlement that came from never hearing the word no. Minjun watched as the hostess Jiwon greeted them with a deep bow. Yoonhee barely acknowledged her, waving her hand dismissively as she swept past to inspect the dining room. Her eyes scanned the space with proprietary interest, as if she still had claim to everything Minjun owned. Is this acceptable? Or should we go somewhere that actually values our patronage? Yoonhee's voice carried across the restaurant, intentionally loud enough for other diners to hear. Jiwon's smile remained professional despite the barb. Of course, Mrs. Park. We have an excellent table by the window. Ms. Choi? Yoonhee corrected sharply, using her maiden name. I haven't been Mrs. Park for 2 years. Thank God for that. She said it loud enough that several nearby tables looked up. Minjun felt his jaw clench, but remained still, half hidden behind his screen. He told himself to leave, to slip out the back before she noticed him. But something kept him rooted to his seat. The hostess seated Yoonhee and her entourage at a prominent table near the center of the dining room, exactly where they could see and be seen. They settled in with an explosion of designer handbags, loud observations about the decor, and the casual cruelty of people who'd never worked a day in their lives. I heard Park Minjun owns this place, one of Yoonhee's friends stage whispered, her voice dripping with fascination. Is it true you were married to him, the actual Baeko enforcer? Yoonhee examined her manicure with studied disinterest. Ancient history. He was somebody once. Now he's just a pathetic man playing at being legitimate, as if anyone's forgotten what he really is. The restaurants are nice, I suppose. But the man behind them? She laughed, cold and brittle. A disappointment in every way. Minjun's fingers tightened around his tablet, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. Her opinion of him didn't matter anymore. He'd made peace with his past. Or was trying to. What she thought was irrelevant. A young waitress approached their table carrying menus and water glasses on a silver tray. Minjun recognized her immediately, Jade Mitchell, one of his newer employees. She was 26, an African-American woman who'd moved to Seoul 18 months ago to teach English and immerse herself in Korean culture while saving money for graduate school. When teaching hadn't paid enough, she'd picked up shifts at Hwamei. Minjun's general manager had praised her work ethic repeatedly, noting that she was learning Korean rapidly and had natural grace with customers. Tonight, Jade looked tired. Minjun knew from the staff schedule that she'd worked a double shift, covering for a colleague who'd called in sick. Her normally bright smile was slightly strained as she approached Yoonhee's table, and Minjun could see the exhaustion in the careful way she balanced the tray. Good evening, ladies, Jade said in flawless Korean, bowing respectfully. Welcome to Hwamei. My name is Jade, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I start you with some water and our wine list? One of Yoonhee's friends giggled, leaning toward the others. Oh my God, did you hear her accent? She speaks Korean. How exotic, another murmured, as if Jade weren't standing right there. Jade's smile didn't waver, though Minjun noticed her shoulders stiffen slightly. She'd learned to handle such comments with grace, he knew. Seoul was becoming more diverse, but casual racism still reared its ugly head, especially among the older, wealthier demographics. The chef has prepared a special tasting menu tonight, Jade continued professionally, setting down the water glasses with practiced precision. I'd be happy to explain each course. We'll order what we want when we want it, Yoonhee interrupted, not looking up from her phone. Just bring the wine list and give us space. Of course, Jade replied, maintaining her composure. She reached across to place the final water glass near Yoonhee's right hand. It happened in slow motion. As Jade extended her arm, the sleeve of her uniform brushed, barely touched, Yoonhee's bare shoulder. It was the lightest contact, completely accidental, the kind of minor thing that happened in busy restaurants a dozen times a night. Yoonhee recoiled as if she'd been burned, jerking backward with such force that her chair scraped loudly against the floor. The entire restaurant seemed to pause, conversations dying mid-sentence as heads turned toward the commotion. "Did you just touch me?" Yoonhee's voice was sharp, dangerous. Jade's eyes widened and she immediately stepped back. "I apologize sincerely. It was completely accidental." Accidental? Yoonhee stood up, and Minjun felt his muscles tense. He knew that look, that tone. He'd seen Yoonhee eviscerate people for lesser perceived slights. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs? Do you even understand the concept of personal space?" "I truly apologize," Jade said, her voice steady despite the obvious distress in her eyes. She bowed deeply, holding the position. "Please forgive my carelessness. I'll bring your wine list immediately." "Your carelessness?" Yoonhee's laugh was cruel. "Is that what they're calling it? Maybe where you're from. It's acceptable to put your hands all over people, but here in Korea, we have standards. We have respect." The racial undertone was unmistakable. Minjun saw Jade's face freeze, saw the way her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the serving tray. Around them, other diners shifted uncomfortably. Jiwon, the hostess, started moving toward the table, but she was too far away. "Ma'am, I assure you it was an accident." Jade tried again, her voice quieter now. "I would never intentionally." "Oh, look at this!" One of Yoonhee's friends interjected, her voice syrupy with false concern. "She's getting defensive. How rude." "What kind of establishment is this?" Another added, joining the attack. "Hiring people who can't even serve properly? Minjun must be more desperate than we thought." Yoonhee's eyes lit up with malicious glee, sensing blood in the water. She stepped closer to Jade, invading her space deliberately. "You know what? I don't think you belong here. This restaurant caters to a certain clientele. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else. Somewhere more appropriate for someone like you." The words hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Minjun was already standing, his chair pushing back silently, but events were unfolding too quickly. Jade's composure finally cracked. Minjun saw tears gathering in her eyes, saw her hands shaking as she tried to maintain her professional bearing. "I'm very sorry you feel that way," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll send another server to help you." She turned to leave, desperate to escape with whatever dignity she had left. That's when Yoonhee picked up the bowl of Korean seafood soup, jampong, that had just been delivered to the table. Minjun saw it happening and started moving, but he was too far away. Everything seemed to happen in terrible slow motion. Yoonhee's face twisted with rage and satisfaction. Her hand rose, tilting the bowl. The soup, still steaming hot from the kitchen, sloshed forward. "Maybe this will teach you to know your place," Yoonhee shrieked. The scalding liquid arced through the air in a deadly orange wave, splashing across Jade's chest, neck, and arms. The ceramic bowl followed, shattering against her shoulder before clattering to the floor. Jade's scream cut through the restaurant like a knife. She stumbled backward, her hands instinctively going to her chest where the hot soup soaked through her uniform, burning her skin. The serving tray crashed to the ground with a deafening clatter. Other diners leaped from their seats, some gasping, others shouting in shock. "Oh my God!" someone yelled. Jade collapsed to her knees, sobbing in pain and shock, desperately trying to pull the scalding fabric away from her skin. Red welts were already forming on her arms and neck where the soup had made contact. The smell of spicy broth mixed with the acrid scent of burning fabric filled the air. Yoonhee stood over her, breathing hard, her face flushed with anger and something like triumph. "That's what happens when you forget your place. Maybe now you'll—" "That's enough, Yoonhee." The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Quiet, controlled, but carrying such weight that the entire restaurant seemed to freeze. Minjun stepped out from behind the decorative screen, his face absolutely calm, but his eyes blazing with controlled fury. Yoonhee's head snapped toward him, her expression cycling rapidly through shock, recognition, and then something like fear. "Minjun, what are you—" But he wasn't looking at her. He was already moving toward Jade, shrugging off his expensive suit jacket as he crossed the distance in 3 long strides. He knelt beside her, his movements careful and precise. "Don't touch the burned areas," he said gently in English, switching languages instinctively. His English was fluent, barely accented. "I know it hurts. We're going to help you." Jade looked up at him through tears, confused and in pain, not understanding who this man was or why he was helping her. Minjun draped his jacket carefully around her shoulders, avoiding the burned areas, giving her some coverage and comfort. "Someone call an ambulance," he ordered in Korean, his voice snapping with authority. "Now." 3 people immediately pulled out their phones. Jiwon was already running toward them, her face pale with shock. Minjun looked up at his general manager, who had appeared from the kitchen. "Sung-ho, bring the first aid kit. Cool water, clean towels, move." Then, finally, he turned his gaze to Yoon-hee. She was still standing there, her hand slightly raised as if frozen in the moment of throwing the soup. Her friends had backed away, suddenly very interested in examining their phones. The triumph had drained from Yoon-hee's face, replaced by dawning comprehension and something that might have been panic. "Minjun, she touched me. She was disrespectful." Yoon-hee started, her voice taking on a wheedling quality that Minjun remembered too well, the tone she used when trying to manipulate her way out of consequences. "Be quiet," Minjun said softly. The words were barely above a whisper, but they carried enough menace that Yoon-hee actually took a step backward. "Don't say another word." He pulled out his phone, never taking his eyes off his ex-wife. "Yes, I need police at Hwamei restaurant on Gangnam-daero. There's been an assault. The victim has been attacked with hot liquid and needs medical attention immediately. The assailant is still on scene." He paused. "Yes, I'll make sure she doesn't leave." Yoon-hee's eyes widened. "Police? Are you insane? This is between me and some careless waitress who—" "I said be quiet." Minjun's voice remained level, but there was steel beneath the calm. He looked at his head of security, a former Beko member named Dae-jung, who'd followed Minjun into legitimate business. The man had been discreetly stationed near the entrance and was now approaching quickly. "No one from that table leaves until the police arrive," Minjun instructed. "Especially her." Dae-jung nodded, positioning himself between Yoon-hee's table and the exit. Another security guard appeared from the back, blocking the rear entrance. Yoon-hee's friends looked at each other nervously, clearly calculating whether their association with her was worth this level of trouble. Sung-ho returned with the first aid kit and a bowl of cool water. Minjun took the clean towels, gently dabbing at Jade's arms where the soup hadn't fully soaked through. He was careful, methodical. His hands surprisingly gentle for someone with his history. "What's your name?" he asked Jade quietly in English. Jade, she managed through her tears. "Jade Mitchell." "Jade, I'm Minjun Park. I own this restaurant. I'm so sorry this happened to you." His voice was steady, calm, the kind of voice meant to cut through panic. "The ambulance is coming. You're going to be okay. I promise you'll receive the best care available." I didn't do anything wrong," Jade sobbed. "I barely touched her. It was an accident. I know. I saw everything." Minjun's jaw tightened. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Do you understand me?" Jade nodded, wincing as another wave of pain washed over her. The cool water was helping, but the burns were clearly severe. Minjun could see blistering starting to form on her forearm where the soup had been hottest. Behind them, Yoon-hee had found her voice again. "This is ridiculous. Minjun, you can't seriously be calling the police over a simple accident. It was her fault for being clumsy." Minjun stood slowly, turning to face her. The expression on his face made several nearby diners actually move back. It wasn't rage. That would have been easier to handle. It was something colder, more dangerous. The look of a man who'd made a decision and wouldn't be moved. "Accident?" he repeated quietly. "You deliberately picked up a bowl of boiling soup and threw it at another human being. I watched you do it. These people watched you do it." He gestured to the restaurant full of witnesses, many of whom were now recording on their phones. "This restaurant has security cameras on every corner. Your accident is documented from 4 different angles." Yoon-hee's face went pale. In her rage, she'd forgotten about the cameras. "Minjun, please, be reasonable. We were married. We have history." "Had," he corrected. "We had a marriage. It ended because you couldn't love a man who wasn't a monster." "Well, Congratulations, Yoon-hee. You're looking at who I'm trying to become, and that person won't let you hurt innocent people without consequences. She's just a waitress. Yoon-hee's voice rose, desperation making her cruel again. She's nothing. And you're going to ruin me over nothing? The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Even Yoon-hee's friends looked uncomfortable now, edging further away from their companion. Minjun's expression didn't change. She's a human being. Her name is Jade Mitchell. She's 26 years old. She works 2 jobs to save money for graduate school. She learns languages for fun and has perfect attendance here because she actually values honest work. She has dreams, family, friends who love her, and a future ahead of her. She is not nothing. He took a step toward Yoon-hee, and she instinctively backed up. You, on the other hand, Minjun continued, his voice dropping even lower. You threw boiling soup on her because she accidentally brushed your shoulder. You used racial slurs. You tried to humiliate her for entertainment. And now you're shocked that actions have consequences? Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Yoon-hee's face crumpled, tears starting to stream down her carefully made-up face. Minjun, please. Think about what this will do to my reputation, my friends, my social standing. I am thinking about it, Minjun said flatly. I'm thinking about how your reputation is built on cruelty. Your standing is built on money you didn't earn and power you never deserved. I'm thinking about how I gave you everything, and you used it to become exactly the kind of person I'm trying not to be anymore. The ambulance arrived first, paramedics rushing in with equipment. Minjun stepped aside to let them work, explaining quickly in Korean what had happened. They immediately began treating Jade, carefully cutting away the soaked parts of her uniform to access the burns, starting IVs, preparing her for transport. I'm going with her to the hospital, Minjun announced to Sung-ho. You're in charge here. Cooperate fully with the police. Give them copies of all security footage. All of it. Yes, sir. The police arrived moments later, 2 officers who took in the scene with practiced eyes. Minjun recognized one of them, Officer Kim, who'd investigated several cases involving the Baeko organization years ago. The recognition was mutual. Kim's eyebrows rose slightly, but he remained professional. Mr. Park, you called in the assault? I did. I'm the owner of this establishment. I witnessed the entire incident. Minjun gestured to Yoon-hee, who was now sitting at her table, surrounded by her hovering friends, her face in her hands. That woman, Choi Yoon-hee, deliberately threw scalding soup at my employee, causing those burns. He nodded toward Jade, who was being loaded onto a stretcher. It was unprovoked. There are multiple witnesses and security footage. Officer Kim looked at Yoon-hee, then back at Minjun. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement of how far Minjun had come, perhaps. We'll need your statement. I'll come to the station tomorrow. Right now, I need to make sure my employee receives proper medical care. Daejung can provide initial statements from staff and management. Minjun pulled out a business card. This is my lawyer. He'll be present for any formal interviews. My insurance will cover all medical expenses for Ms. Mitchell, and I'll be pressing charges on her behalf and on behalf of my establishment. Yoon-hee's head snapped up. Your establishment? You're pressing charges as the restaurant owner? Minjun looked at her coldly. Did you think I wouldn't? You assaulted someone in my restaurant, Yoon-hee. You endangered my employees and traumatized my customers. Yes, I'm pressing charges. Assault, creating a public disturbance, and anything else my lawyers can make stick. But you can't. Yoon-hee stood shakily, reaching toward him. Minjun, I'm sorry. I'll apologize to her. I'll pay for her medical bills, just please. Too late. Minjun turned away from her, following the paramedics toward the ambulance. Over his shoulder, he added, You should call your lawyer, Yoon-hee. You're going to need one. The ride to Seoul National University Hospital was tense. Jade drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain and shock taking their toll. Minjun sat in the ambulance, staying out of the paramedics' way but present. When Jade was lucid enough, he spoke to her gently, reassuring her, promising her everything would be taken care of. At the hospital, Minjun moved like a force of nature. He demanded the best burn specialist available. He filled out paperwork, provided his credit card for any expenses, made calls to ensure Jade's family in Atlanta was notified, and provided with flight information if they wanted to come to Seoul. He contacted the American embassy to ensure they were aware one of their citizens had been assaulted and was receiving proper care. It was 3 in the morning before a doctor emerged from the burn unit. Minjun stood immediately, crossing the waiting room in long strides. "How is she?" The doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked tired but calm. "Ms. Mitchell is stable. The burns are second degree, primarily on her chest, neck, and arms. Painful and serious, but not life-threatening. We've treated and dressed the wounds. She'll need to stay for observation tonight, but if there are no complications, she can be discharged tomorrow with strict wound care instructions." Minjun felt something in his chest unclench. "Thank God. Can I see her?" "She's sedated for the pain, but yes, briefly." Jade looked small in the hospital bed, her arms and chest wrapped in specialized burn dressings. An IV dripped steadily into her arm. Her face, one of the few areas not injured, was peaceful in sleep, though her eyelids were still red and puffy from crying. Minjun stood by her bed for a long moment, hands in his pockets, looking down at this young woman whose life had been violently disrupted by his ex-wife's cruelty. Guilt gnawed at him. Guilt that Yoon-hee had been his choice, his responsibility. Guilt that his past life had created the monster she'd become. "I'm sorry," he whispered, even though she couldn't hear him. "I promise I'll make this right." He left his phone number with the nurses, along with instructions that he was to be called immediately if anything changed, or if Jade needed anything. Then he headed to the police station to file his official report. The next week was a whirlwind. The video footage from Hwamei went viral within hours. Someone, probably one of the horrified diners, had uploaded their phone recording to social media, and it spread like wildfire. By morning, Yoon-hee's face was everywhere, her identity uncovered by the internet's ruthless investigative capabilities within hours. The headlines were brutal. "Former Mafia wife assaults waitress in racist attack." "Wealthy socialite arrested after pouring hot soup on employee." "Shocking video entitled Woman's Violent Meltdown Goes Viral." The Korean public, already frustrated with displays of wealth inequality and casual racism, seized on the story. Yoon-hee became the face of everything wrong with Korea's elite class. Her friends abandoned her overnight, suddenly unable to recall ever being close to her. The luxury brand ambassadorships she'd cultivated disappeared. The exclusive social clubs quietly revoked her memberships. Minjun watched it unfold with no satisfaction, only a grim sense of inevitability. He'd seen people destroyed before, though usually by his own hand in his previous life. This was different. This was consequence, pure and simple. Society was holding someone accountable. He visited Jade every day at the hospital. At first she was confused by his attention, uncomfortable with owing so much to a stranger, especially one who owned the restaurant and was the ex-husband of her attacker. But Minjun was patient, never pushy, always respectful of her boundaries. "Why are you doing all this?" Jade asked him on the third day, when the sedatives had worn off enough for real conversation. Her voice was hoarse from screaming, but stronger. "The medical bills, the lawyer, everything. You don't even know me." Minjun sat in the visitor's chair, his suit jacket draped over the armrest. He looked tired, older than his 42 years in that moment. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because Yoon-hee became who she is, partly because I enabled her. I gave her money and power and never held her accountable for how she treated people. I was too focused on my own business to care about who was hurt along the way." "You're talking about the Mafia thing," Jade said quietly. "I've seen the articles. Everyone's talking about your past." Minjun nodded slowly. "I'm not proud of who I was. I'm trying to be better. But that doesn't erase the damage I did, or the damage done by people I empowered." He met her eyes. "What Yoon-hee did to you is unforgivable, but I share responsibility for creating the person who could do that. So yes, I'm paying your medical bills. I'm making sure you have the best care. It's the absolute least I can do." Jade studied him for a long moment. The articles say you left the organization 3 years ago, that you've been trying to go straight. I have been. It's... He smiled sadly. It's harder than I expected. You can leave the life, but the life doesn't always leave you. People still see me as I was. Maybe they always will. That must be lonely, Jade said softly. The simple empathy in her words caught Minjun off guard. He looked away, his throat tight. Sometimes, but it's what I deserve. I don't think that's true, Jade said. I think everyone deserves a chance to change, even if it's hard, even if people don't believe you. She shifted carefully in the bed, wincing slightly. You could have ignored what happened. You could have quietly paid me off and made it go away. Instead, you're holding her accountable. That matters. Over the following days, they talked more. Minjun learned about Jade's life, her childhood in Atlanta, her love of languages and cultures, her dream of getting a PhD in international relations. Jade learned about Minjun's grandmother, who'd raised him after his parents died and whose memory still haunted him with disappointment over the choices he'd made. She used to say that a man's character is defined by what he does when no one's watching, Minjun told her one afternoon. I failed that test for most of my life, but I'm trying now, even if it's too late. It's not too late, Jade insisted. You're making different choices now. That counts. A week after the incident, Jade was discharged with strict wound care protocols. Minjun arranged for a private car to take her home, along with a nurse who would visit daily to help with dressings until Jade could manage alone. He also ensured she received full pay for all the work she was missing, plus a substantial compensation package for pain and suffering. This is too much, Jade protested when her lawyer showed her the settlement offer. I mean, I'm grateful, but it's not too much, Minjun said firmly. You were assaulted while working for me. You'll need time to heal. You shouldn't have to worry about money while you're recovering. But he had one more thing in mind, something that had been taking shape over the past week. He waited until Jade had been home for a few days, until some of the initial trauma had begun to fade and she could think clearly about her future. He called and asked if he could visit. Jade agreed, curious and a little nervous. Her apartment in Itaewon was modest but comfortable. The living space of someone making do while saving every extra one for bigger dreams. Minjun arrived with flowers, tasteful, not overly romantic, and a carefully prepared proposition. I have a job offer for you, he said, after they'd settled in her small living room with tea. And before you say anything, please hear me out completely. Jade's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. My restaurant chain is expanding. We have 12 locations in Seoul and 3 more opening this year. We're also looking at international expansion. Tokyo, New York, Los Angeles. Minjun leaned forward slightly. I need someone to head up our diversity and inclusion initiatives. Someone who understands what it means to be foreign in Korea. Someone who can train staff on cultural sensitivity, create policies that protect employees from discrimination, and help us build a reputation as a place where everyone is valued. He pulled out a folder, setting it on the coffee table between them. This is the job description and salary offer. It's a director-level position. It comes with full benefits, relocation assistance if you want a better apartment, and a budget to build a team. You'd report directly to me and have real authority to make changes. Jade stared at the folder, not touching it. Minjun, I'm a waitress. I don't have experience in human resources or corporate management. You have something better. You have lived experience. You've faced the exact problems we need to solve. Minjun's voice was earnest. I've watched you handle difficult customers with grace for months. I've seen your language skills, your intelligence, your work ethic. And I saw how you maintained your dignity even when Yoon-hee was attacking you. That takes strength. Or trauma response, Jade said with a weak smile. Maybe both. Minjun smiled back gently. Look, I'm not asking you to decide right now. Your recovery comes first. But I want you to think about it. I'm serious about making my businesses better. I can hire consultants with fancy degrees, but I'd rather hire someone who actually understands the issue from the inside, someone I trust to be honest with me. Jade picked up the folder, opening it slowly. Her eyes widened as she saw the salary figure. This is real? Completely real. Take your time. Read it over. Talk to your lawyer, your family, anyone you trust. Minjun stood. I'll leave you alone to think. But Jade, I hope you'll consider it. I think you could do amazing things. After he left, Jade sat for a long time staring at the job offer. Her hands trembled slightly as she read through the details. It was everything she'd dreamed of and more. Meaningful work, financial security, a chance to actually make a difference. It would mean abandoning her graduate school plans, at least temporarily, but it also offered something graduate school couldn't. Real-world impact, immediate and tangible. She called her mother in Atlanta that night. Mama, something happened, Jade began, and told her everything. The assault, Minjun's intervention, the viral video, and now the job offer. Her mother listened without interrupting, a skill she'd perfected over Jade's 26 years. When Jade finished, there was a long pause. This man, her mother said finally. This Minjun. Do you trust him? Jade considered the question seriously. I think I do. I know his past is complicated, but yeah, I think he's genuine about trying to change. And this job offer isn't about charity. He really needs someone to do this work. Then what's holding you back, baby? Jade closed her eyes. I'm scared. What if I fail? What if I take this job and I'm terrible at it? What if people think I only got it because of what happened? People will think what they think regardless, her mother said wisely. The question is, what do you think? Do you think you can do this job? Yeah, I think maybe I can. Then do it. Take the chance. You can always go back to school later if you want, but opportunities like this, they don't come around often, and you've already proven you're stronger than you knew. That woman tried to break you, baby, and you're still standing. You can handle this job. Jade called Minjun the next morning. I have some conditions, she said when he answered. I'm listening. I want final say on all diversity and inclusion policies. I want quarterly budget reviews so I can adjust programs as needed. I want you to commit to actually implementing the changes I recommend, not just paying me to write policies that sit in a drawer. And I want a mentor. Someone in corporate management who can help me learn the business side while I figure this out. Minjun was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, genuine and warm. Deal. All of it. When can you start? After my doctor clears me, probably 3 weeks. Perfect. I'll have HR draw up the contract. Minjun? Jade paused. Thank you. For everything. Thank you. He replied quietly. For giving me a chance to do something right. The trial date for Yoonhee's assault case was set for 3 months out. In the meantime, she tried everything to make it go away. Her lawyer reached out to Minjun repeatedly with settlement offers, each more desperate than the last. Yoonhee would pay damages, issue a public apology, attend counseling, anything if he would just drop the charges. Minjun refused every offer. She needs to face actual consequences, he told his lawyer. For once in her life, money can't save her. Yoonhee tried a different approach, showing up at Minjun's office building 2 months after the incident. Security called him before letting her up, and he almost refused to see her. But curiosity won out. He wanted to see if she'd changed at all. She looked different. Thinner, her designer clothes still expensive but somehow less polished. The arrogance had drained from her face, replaced by something that looked like genuine desperation. 5 minutes, Minjun said as she entered his office. He didn't invite her to sit. What do you want, Yoonhee? I want you to drop the charges. Her voice was small, nothing like the imperious tone from the restaurant. Please, Minjun, I've lost everything. My friends won't talk to me. My family is ashamed. I can't get a table at any decent restaurant. Do you know what it's like to be recognized everywhere and have people whisper and point? No, Minjun said flatly. I don't know what that's like at all. The sarcasm was deliberate. As a former Mafia enforcer, he knew exactly what it was like to be notorious. Yoonhee flinched. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... She took a shaky breath. I'm sorry for what I did. To that girl, to Jade. It was wrong. I was angry and I lashed out and I'm sorry. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? The question hung in the air. Yoonhee's face crumpled. Both, she whispered. Is that so wrong? Can't I be sorry for both? I never thought. I didn't realize. She wrapped her arms around herself. Watching that video, seeing myself from the outside, hearing what I said. I was a monster, Minjun. I was exactly what you walked away from. Yes, Minjun said simply. You were. I want to apologize to her. To Jade. Properly. No. Yoonhee looked up, startled. No? Jade doesn't need your apology for your sake. If you want to apologize to make yourself feel better, to absolve yourself, then no. She's been through enough. Minjun crossed his arms. If you genuinely want to make amends, you'll accept the consequences of your actions. You'll go to trial, you'll accept whatever judgment comes, and you'll work to become a better person. Not for appearances, not to get your old life back, but because it's right. But I could go to jail, Yoonhee said, her voice breaking. You assaulted someone, Yoonhee, violently, with witnesses and video evidence. Yes, you could go to jail. That's what happens when you hurt people. She stared at him for a long moment, and Minjun saw the moment she realized he was truly done with her. That there would be no reconciliation, no softening, no last-minute reprieve. The Minjun who had given her everything was gone, replaced by someone she didn't know and couldn't manipulate. You've really changed, she said finally. Yes, I have. I wish. She trailed off, shaking her head. It doesn't matter what I wish. I should go. She turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think she's lucky. That girl, Jade, to have you fighting for her. I'm not fighting for her, Minjun said quietly. I'm fighting for what's right. There's a difference. After Yoonhee left, Minjun stood at his office window looking out over Seoul. His phone buzzed, a text from Jade. Her first day was tomorrow and she was nervous but excited. She wanted to know if they could meet before the official start time to go over her initial ideas. He smiled, typing back a quick affirmative. Then he pulled up the security footage from the restaurant that night, something he'd watched a dozen times in the past weeks. He watched himself intervene, watched himself make the right choice in the moment. His grandmother had been right. Character was defined by what you did when no one was watching. But it was also defined by what you did when everyone was watching. When the choice was hard, when doing the right thing cost you something. He'd spent 20 years being the wrong kind of man. He had 3 years of trying to be better. It wasn't redemption. He wasn't sure he believed in redemption. But it was progress. And for now, that would have to be enough. The day Jade came to meet with Minjun before her first official day, she arrived at his office with a detailed presentation on her laptop and a nervous energy that reminded him of soldiers before battle, focused, determined, but aware they were stepping into something significant. Okay, she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. I've spent the last 3 weeks researching best practices in workplace diversity, looking at what other restaurant chains do, and identifying the biggest problems I observed even in my short time working at Huamai. Minjun leaned back, genuinely interested. I'm listening. First, hiring practices. We need to actively recruit from diverse communities, but more importantly, we need to train hiring managers to recognize their own biases. I want to implement blind resume reviews for the initial screening and standardized interview questions. She clicked to the next slide. Second, staff training. Not just a single diversity workshop that everyone sleeps through. I want ongoing training, scenario-based learning, and clear protocols for handling discrimination, both from staff and from customers. Customers, Minjun repeated thoughtfully. That's tricky. We need their business. We need the right customer's business, Jade corrected firmly. If someone can't treat our staff with respect, they shouldn't be welcome. Period. I want a clear policy. Discrimination of any kind results in immediate removal from the premises, no refund, and a lifetime ban if warranted. Minjun raised his eyebrows. That's aggressive. That's necessary. Jade's eyes were intense. Right now, your staff doesn't feel protected. They feel like they have to accept abuse because the customer is always right. That needs to change. Your employees need to know you have their backs. He considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'm on board. What else? They spent 2 hours going through her proposals: employee resource groups, cultural competency certifications, partnerships with international community organizations, revised dress code policies that respected religious and cultural practices, multilingual training materials, and anonymous reporting systems for workplace concerns. This is ambitious, Minjun said when she finished. And expensive. Yes, but it's also right. And honestly, Jade closed her laptop. It's also good business. Seoul is becoming more international. The customers are changing. If your restaurants become known as places that value diversity and treat everyone with dignity, you'll attract better staff and a broader customer base. This isn't charity. It's smart. Minjun smiled. You're going to be very good at this job. I hope so. Jade's confidence wavered slightly. To be honest, I'm terrified I'll screw it up. You won't. And even if you make mistakes, we'll learn from them. That's how this works. He stood, extending his hand. Welcome to the team, Director Mitchell. She shook his hand, her grip firm. Thank you for this chance, Mr. Park. Minjun, he corrected. We're colleagues now. Then Jade, she replied with a smile. Just Jade. The trial happened on a gray November morning. The courthouse was packed with media, curious onlookers, and advocacy groups who'd latched onto the case as emblematic of broader issues. Minjun sat in the gallery, dressed in a conservative suit, his face impassive. Jade sat beside him, her burns healed now, but still visible as faint scars on her arms. Yoon-hee arrived with her lawyer, her head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. She'd lost weight, and her designer clothes hung on her frame. The arrogance was completely gone, replaced by what looked like genuine shame. The trial was straightforward. The security footage was damning. Witness testimony was consistent. Even Yoon-hee's own lawyer seemed resigned to the inevitable outcome. Yoon-hee herself took the stand and, to everyone's surprise, admitted guilt fully. I did it, she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. Everything they said I did. I was angry, and I was cruel, and I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. There's no excuse. I'm guilty. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to die. The prosecutor looked pleasantly surprised. The judge listened carefully, asked a few questions, and then called for a recess to consider sentencing. During the break, Jade turned to Minjun. Do you think she means it? The remorse? I think she's experienced consequences for the first time in her life, Minjun said. Whether that translates to genuine change, he shrugged. Time will tell. Would you forgive her, if she asked? Minjun thought about it. Forgiveness isn't mine to give. She didn't hurt me. She hurt you. Jade was quiet for a moment. I don't know if I forgive her. Not yet. Maybe someday. But I don't hate her anymore. Hating her gives her too much power over me. The judge returned with the sentence. 18 months in prison, with possibility of parole, after 12 months pending good behavior. Additionally, a substantial fine, mandatory anger management and cultural sensitivity counseling, and a 5-year probation period after release. It was a strong sentence, stronger than many expected. Yoon-hee took it without reaction, simply nodding as if she'd expected nothing less. As she was led away, she glanced back at the gallery. Her eyes found Minjun's, then moved to Jade's. She mouthed something, I'm sorry, before disappearing through the door. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed them. Minjun made a brief statement. Justice was served today. My ex-wife committed a serious crime and will face appropriate consequences. I hope this sends a message that nobody, regardless of wealth or status, is above the law. I'm proud of Ms. Mitchell's courage in pursuing this case, and I'm grateful to the justice system for holding people accountable. Jade added her own statement. I hope this case reminds everyone that service workers are human beings deserving of respect. No one should have to experience what I went through. I'm grateful to Mr. Park and everyone at Huami for supporting me, and I hope other businesses will learn from this and create safer workplaces for all employees. That night, Minjun took Jade and several members of her new team out to dinner. Not at one of his restaurants, but at a small, family-owned place in Hongdae that served the best kimchi jjigae in Seoul. It was casual, warm, full of laughter and relief that the trial was finally over. To new beginnings, Jade toasted, raising her soju glass. To second chances, Minjun added, clinking his glass against hers. To doing better, someone else contributed. They drank and talked, and for a few hours the weight of the past months lifted. Minjun watched Jade laugh with her new colleagues, watched her confidence grow as she discussed her plans for the diversity initiative, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe redemption wasn't possible. Maybe his past would always haunt him. But sitting there, watching this young woman he'd helped flourish, knowing that his intervention had made a real difference, he thought maybe his grandmother would have been a little bit proud. And that was enough. 6 months later, Jade's diversity and inclusion program was fully implemented across all of Minjun's restaurants. Staff turnover had decreased by 30%. Employee satisfaction scores had skyrocketed. 2 major food critics had specifically praised Hwame's commitment to creating welcoming environments for both staff and diverse clientele. Jade had hired a team of 3, all from different backgrounds, all passionate about the work. Together, they were expanding the program beyond restaurants, helping Minjun's other businesses, the real estate company, the import firm, develop their own policies and training. Minjun's reputation was slowly shifting. He was still the former Mafia enforcer, still had that shadow following him. But increasingly, he was also becoming known as a businessman who backed up progressive talk with real action. Other companies started reaching out, asking about his diversity initiatives, wanting to know how they could implement similar programs. "You're becoming respectable," his lawyer joked during one meeting. "How does it feel?" "Strange," Minjun admitted, "like wearing someone else's clothes. But it felt good too, better than he'd expected." Yoon-hee served 13 months before being released on parole. Minjun heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved to Busan, away from Seoul's social circles. She was actually working, at a nonprofit that helped victims of domestic violence. Whether it was genuine reformation or just good optics for her parole officer, he didn't know and didn't particularly care. He saw her once, unexpectedly, at a conference on workplace safety. She was there with the nonprofit, and he was there as a panelist discussing employer responsibility in protecting workers. They made eye contact across the conference hall. She didn't approach, just gave a small nod of acknowledgement. He returned it. They weren't friends. They would never be friends. But maybe they'd both learned something from the wreckage of their past. That evening, Minjun met Jade at a cafe near her apartment. It had become a monthly tradition, checking in, discussing the program's progress, and just talking as friends. "I've been thinking about something," Jade said as they settled into their usual corner table. "Do you remember what you told me at the hospital? About how you shared responsibility for who Yoon-hee became?" Minjun nodded, stirring his Americano. "I think you were wrong." Jade's voice was gentle but firm. "She made her own choices. You can't take responsibility for her actions any more than she can take credit for your redemption. We're all responsible for ourselves." "Maybe," Minjun said, "but the people we surround ourselves with, the systems we create, the behaviors we enable, they matter. I gave her power and never taught her accountability. That's on me." "Okay, but you're also teaching accountability now. You're creating systems that protect people instead of exploiting them. Doesn't that count for more?" Minjun smiled slightly. "When did you become so wise?" "Since someone gave me a job I wasn't qualified for and forced me to figure it out." Jade grinned. "Seriously though, I think you need to forgive yourself. Not for everything. Some things maybe can't be forgiven. But for trying. For changing. For being better than you were." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Seoul rush past the cafe windows, millions of people, all with their own stories, their own struggles, their own attempts at becoming something better than they were. "Thank you," Minjun said finally, "for taking the job, for giving me a chance to do something right." "Thank you for intervening that night," Jade replied, "for seeing me as a person worth protecting." You saved me in more ways than one. They finished their coffee and went their separate ways, back to their lives, their work, their ongoing attempts at building something good from broken pieces. Minjun walked home through Gangnam's glittering streets, past the restaurant where everything had changed, and thought about second chances. About how a single moment, a choice to stand up instead of walk away, could redirect everything. About how redemption might not be about erasing the past, but about refusing to let it define the future. His phone buzzed. A message from Jade. New hire starting Monday, former refugee from Syria. Reminds me that we're all just trying to find our place in the world. See you at the staff meeting. Minjun smiled, typing back. See you there. The streets of Seoul stretched before him, full of possibility and second chances, of people trying to be better than they were yesterday. And for the first time in his 42 years, Minjun Park felt like he might actually belong among them. Not as the man he'd been, but as the man he was trying to become. And that, finally, was enough.